Well, I look forward to our next head coach having a lot of success and being with us for a long, long time, and bringing the kind of winning team to this community that we can all be proud of. And I look forward to that.
Welcome back to Two Birds, One Stone, a podcast presented by DraftKings Sportsbook. DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL, is my go-to when betting on the NFL this holiday season. They've got same-game parlays, easy and fast payouts, player prop options, and much, much more. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 on any NFL team to win their game and get $150 in free bets if they do. Check this out. Right now, everyone can bet up to a 100% boost with DraftKings stepped-up same-game parlays. Go to the DraftKings Sportsbook app, place a same-game parlay, and combine multiple bets like which team will win, player props, point totals, and more. The more legs you add, the bigger the boost, the bigger your shot to win big. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use code TPPN. Place a $5 bet on any NFL team to win their game and get $150 in free bets if they do. Only at DraftKings Sportsbook with code TPPN. Minimum age and eligibility restrictions apply. See show notes for details. Get in on the action for Wild Card Weekend. It's going to be a fun-filled football weekend that won't include your Arizona Cardinals, who finished their season 4-13 after a loss to the San Francisco 49ers, 38-13 on Sunday. We're not going to talk about the game hardly at all because we got a lot of news this week. Garrett, some good news, I think. You think good news, right? I think we're all in agreement.
Sure.
The Cardinals fired Kliff Kingsbury on Monday. I think a lot of people expected it. Icing on top of that is Steve Keim will not be returning as general manager of the Cardinals. We'll get into it with our guest that we have on today, Bo Brack from the PHNX Cardinals podcast. Very insightful, smart guy, locked in with the Cardinals. He's in the facility almost every day doing player interviews and things like that. So excited to have him on. He's going to hop on here in about half an hour with us. I'm sure it's going to go good. I think so. We haven't done it yet, so I'm going to tell you it was awesome. But he's a good guy. I'm excited to talk to him. What went across your mind right away, Garrett, when we found out that our head coach for 2023 will not be Kliff Kingsbury?
I think we kind of talked a little bit prior. I was obviously happy. I think everybody was kind of knew it was going to happen for the most part, but a little part of me was like sad, kind of, because we do. I think you share the same feeling as well. We like Kliff. He's a cool guy. You know, he's not like he's I don't know. He's just a cool guy. I mean, he has all the women,
professional,
and a cool house, and he's professional. He's well on camera. Like he's well on the mic. He's a cool guy. And just what I feel like we saw glimpses of what his vision was for the offense and what he wanted the team to look like. And he never quite got it to where he wanted, I feel. Right. But you can only let that stuff go for so long, especially you can't go 4-13 and, with the roster that we had, given injuries, but with the roster we had, it's non-excusable. But a part of me was sad.
Yeah. And that's understandable. This is a guy, I mean, he's been here for 4 years. You first arrive and you got this fresh new face, young guy. He's going to be a guy that comes in, saves the offense, and you saw it progress in the first 3 years. And there were mistakes that you would see. Clock management was never really there, but they were progressing. And by the fourth year this year, after playoffs last year, it took a hard nosedive. You could make excuses with the injuries and they were depleted, but it's in a results league, like you hear everybody say. Four wins after a playoff appearance is hard to swallow, regardless if you just got a 5-year contract extension, which I'm ecstatic that Michael Bidwell, that didn't have hinge his decision. It didn't matter that he's going to be out a lot of money. It came out that his contract is fully guaranteed for 5 years. It's not a cheap contract either. It's millions and millions of dollars. And Bidwell said, I'm not going to take the cheap route. I'm gonna eat this money because it was my mistake. I was the one that decided to extend both Kingsbury and Kime. I'm going to nip it in the ass now, and I'll eat it, and I'll pay a boatload to hopefully Sean Payton, who is now plus 200 in the DraftKings Sportsbook app to be the Cardinals' next head coach. By far the biggest odds. So that number's shooting up. Good to see that. But it was time. And yeah, I felt bad too. He was, like I said, it was professional. Like, so much shit went on. Sean Kugler, the Kyler contract, the collapse, but he still went up there, sat at the podium. He answered all the questions. He handled himself well, and it just didn't work out. There's already reports that the Patriots are interested in him for their offensive coordinator position. The Titans as well. His ties with Mike Vrabel and Bill Belichick. I even heard Alabama, which would be interesting if Bill O'Brien leaves there to go be an offensive coordinator with the Patriots or another NFL team. That would be interesting to see. Alabama is they just take all the quote unquote failed guys, bring them in, they touch them up, clean up their image, and then kick them back out and find another spot. But I think I heard on a podcast, he's got so much goddamn money. I don't know if I see him going back to college, like, and dealing with all the new, and it's a completely different game now than when he was there in Texas Tech a few years ago. A lot less control, way more power to the players. So I don't know if a fucking guy like that wants to deal with all that nonsense. But
I don't necessarily feel bad for him because he does have a 5-year fully guaranteed contract he just kind of gets to hang out with. So I don't feel bad for him. It's more just like I don't know. He's one of the coaches. I mean, he was what? You said 4 or 5 years? He was
4 years.
4 years we had him. I mean, that's one of the longer coaches we've had, one of the most tenured coaches we've had. So especially in, the past, 4 years of immediate Cardinal past. I mean, it's I don't feel bad for him. It's just more it's change and it sucks. But
well, yeah, you get comfortable and you root. I mean, just like with players, you get attached to them. You get attached to guys, and even though he drove you crazy at times, it's like I still remember defending him as hard as I could the last couple of years because I was like, that's our coach, so you might as well deal with it and root him on. And yeah, now he's gone. What else did we have? The thing about the tenure and Adam Schefter's report of them firing Kliff. It's like the Cardinals have never had a coach last longer than 6 seasons, and they're 100-year career or 100-year history as a franchise, which is pretty insane. The rotating door of coaches that come in and out. And I think Kliff was like 3rd or 4th all time in wins in franchise history, which is pretty fucking nuts. Celebrate a historic leader of this team. 3rd all time in wins. Come on, baby. We should be cheering him as he goes out the door. That's pretty fucking nuts.
Yeah, that's pretty sad. That stat was definitely floating around a bunch, which it's a terrible stat. And I feel like stuff like that has to get back to Bidwell. Like, has to get to him. He has to see shit like that. Like that's his business. That's his livelihood. I mean, it was his dad's business, and he doesn't. The last thing he probably wants to do is fail. So it is very nice to see that he, like you mentioned, will just eat the rest of Kliff's contract that is now, fully guaranteed. It's a step in the right direction. All the Bidwell haters, that hopefully can silence that a little bit, just because effort is, which granted he hasn't hired anybody yet, so he could fucking promote Vance Joseph, and that could be terrible and the worst thing to happen in the franchise. But he's at least showing the initiative to try to, make things better.
Yeah. I think the effort's been there. The whole thing about the Bidwell regime, well, they've owned the team their whole history, but whole thing about them is that they're cheap, and his dad never wanted to spend money. But ever since he's kind of taken over, new stadium, he's being more aggressive, spending more money in free agency. You see him making moves like this. Like, it's encouraging, I think, to say the least. And like you said, we've got a ways to go. There's moves that we all want to see made. You don't want to overreact. If it is of Vance Joseph or anybody other than Sean Payton, we got to give the person a chance. But we'll get into all the coaching candidates with Bo when he comes on here soon. But yeah, I mean, terrible, shitty season. and it ended with Keim and Kliff out the door. I remember last season after playoffs, you were on Fire Kliff then. Like, it was like, it was a terrible collapse. Everybody was feeling it. It was a terrible feeling because you thought you had a chance to go and win a Super Bowl, and then it all just fell to shit. And I didn't think that it was going to happen then. Obviously, I thought you can't fire a guy after a playoff appearance. But I think at the end of that, the last episode of last season, I said, if he only wins 8 games, he's out the door. The standard is now this. You can't drop down below that. He's going to be gone, especially after the collapse. And he didn't even get to half of that. He got 4. So I would have been interested to see if they got a couple more wins, if he still would have been fired. But yeah, 4 isn't going to get it done. But I guess one thing about the game, J.J. Watt's final game, shout out to J.J. Watt, went out as a baller, 2 sacks in his last game. I think he quoted, I know I can still play. I'm just choosing not to. And he showed it all season. He finished with 12.5 sacks. So shout out to J.J. Watt. Congratulations once again on an incredible career. And I'm sure he'll go be an action movie star now with The Rock or some shit like that. But
he'll be the White Rock probably from here on out.
Yeah.
Get all those
be a good
goals.
tandem.
So, who do you think had the better career, Aaron Donald or J.J. Watt? If Aaron Donald were to retire, end up retiring.
Oof. Was JJ's longer? I feel like JJ's was longer for sure.
Aaron Donald's first year would have been the year
2014, 2015. I'm not going to make the call yet. I will biasly say JJ Watt, but Aaron Donald's got the Super Bowl ring, so that might be the tipping point. But without diving into the numbers, I can't give you a definitive answer. But I think the Super Bowl ring, you almost got to go Donald. But that's you're picking hairs there. Those are two of, I said last week, probably 2 of the greatest defensive players of all time. So it's cool to be able to watch them both play.
Yeah, I'd say they're probably top 15 of all time.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. They might be top. People are probably going to put Donald in the top 5. I mean, he got to play in that big market. J.J. Watt in Houston, still a superstar, but I think he's right around top 5 too. They're probably neck and neck there. I think we'll step back in 10 years and be like, that was like watching Lawrence Taylor and those guys. It's going to be that impactful. I think the Niners, I think the Cardinals called timeout and let him come off the field and get a standing ovation, which was really cool to see. I'll put that clip in here somewhere, but
the Jumbotron, and he took it in, and even the opposition appreciative of the kind of player in person he has been.
Getting a standing ovation here.
Yeah, this is nice from this 49er crowd. He said I'll try not to make it emotional. He said it'll probably hit me, when I'm away and I'm supposed to be back out there playing. But there wasn't any doubt in his decision that this was the time.
His wife in the stands crying, holding their baby and all that. And then the emotional video that came out today of Hard Knocks when Vance presented him with a video of all these people telling him congratulations, his brothers, Aaron Rodgers, Dak, Tom Brady, a bunch of different guys, and him getting so emotional. It was cool to see. So I'm glad he kind of got to go out, not quite on the sunset with the 4-13 team, but on his own terms, like we said last week, and still a pretty damn good football player. So congrats to JJ again.
Yeah, it would have been sad to see the decline, but like you said, he kind of went on his own terms. So we didn't have to see that. You never want to see that. It's rare for a player to leave on their own terms. You have to be really special to be able to do that. Talented to do that, and he was one of the few. So
correct. Will obviously DeAndre Hopkins news broke today. We'll get into that with Bo too. Lots of things to talk about. I'm sure it'll all be covered, but yeah, we'll go ahead and cut over to the interview. Garrett, anything else you wanted to say before we do that?
I don't think so.
Nope, nothing. All right. I hope you guys enjoy. Bo is a very smart, intelligent Cardinals fan, reporter, analysis guy. So enjoy and subscribe, download all the episodes. And we'll see you next time. Maybe the next episode is the coach hiring episode. We'll see. I'm sure there'll be more news and and we'll be right here with y'all. So until next time, go Birds. We are now excited to welcome on a guy who was at the Cardinals facility yesterday, interviewing players before the Kliff news broke. Was also present at the Michael Bidwell press conference later on that afternoon. Co-host of the PHNX Cardinals podcast, Bo Brack. Clap it up for Bo Brack, Garrett. Thanks for being here, Bo. How are you, man?
I'm doing great, guys. How's it going? I mean, there's something in the air right now, isn't it? Aren't we excited about it? We're excited about are we feeling hopeful yet?
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of the name of, of course, you have the emotions of, we lost a coach that's been here for 4 years, but I think all of us agree that it was time to move on. But we'll get into all that. My first question, not Cardinals based at all. Did you play high school football?
No, I didn't. No.
What a waste. Bo Brack is like the prototypical high school quarterback, varsity, like Letterman quarterback name. Bo Brack. You can just picture it in your head.
I was a baseball player.
Go to waste.
I was a baseball player, and then I got into radio, so I tried to I tried to maximize and take advantage of it, but I mean I did I broke my leg playing football with my friends in the snow. I grew up on the East Coast in DC, so we had a snow day. I was excited because before I was just lighting up the scoreboard and felt like Barry Sanders out there, and then I broke my leg pretty badly freshman year, so. It was not in the cards for me, but I grew up a baseball fiend and then slowly became just completely overwhelmed and just love football.
It's kind of the same with me. I played baseball throughout high school. I played football a couple years, but it wasn't until I was always like a stat geek or whatever. Not a great player. Garrett was a better player than I was. All conference. You can brag a second if you want to.
Damn.
But
I was pretty much the best.
But football kind of took over. But like I said, we're happy to have you here. We touched on it for a second, but Christmas came late for a lot of Cardinals fans. The news was kind of expected for the majority of us. But just kind of a broad question. After the dust settles, what are your thoughts on the Kliff Kingsbury firing in general and kind of the tenure in totality?
Yeah, I thought that the tenure was one that early on you couldn't deny. Kliff Kingsbury was taking this team, it was progressing this team, right? From 2018 when it pretty much bottomed out. And that was, you thought you couldn't get any worse than that. He took over the reins and it was kind of an experiment, right? You're taking a failed college coach, a guy with more just an offensive background, couldn't really succeed at Texas Tech, even with some solid quarterbacks like Patrick Mahomes. And you paired him with kind of a non-traditional, saying it nicely about Kyler Murray's size and skill set quarterback. And you paired him with that top pick. And, you go from 3 to 5 to 8 to 11 wins in a playoff appearance. And progress is progress. And that's what it was viewed like from this organization, despite, all the skepticism, the red flags that went with that playoff appearance last year and how they finished. And then you kind of had the inexplicable, contract extension for Kliff and Keim. And I think that kind of riled up this fan base saying, what are we doing? Is the leadership at the top? Are they going to make the right decisions going forward? Because it feels like you just locked yourself into something that you should have just utilized this final year for. And, from the very get-go, as far as this previous offseason went, I mean, those extensions, the Kyler Murray contract saga, we'll call it, the unfortunate passing of Jeff Gladney. You had Rodney Hudson try to retire. Justin Pugh tried to retire, and they wooed both of those guys back. You had Hollywood Brown go 126 on the 101, going to training camp, and a couple coaches were fired in between, and then the results on the field were just brutal. So I think it was pretty much undeniable, and especially as far as how he finished seasons over the 10 years. This is not just a sample size for Kliff Kingsbury from Texas Tech year one to this year. Kliff Kingsbury just couldn't win at the end of the game, in the seasons, and to have one win in a calendar year, you just can't sell that to your fan base. So, and for Kyler Murray, somebody you locked into a contract, $230.5 million with 160 plus in guarantees, he took a step back. There were so many things that were pointing to change. And I think the ceiling for Kliff Kingsbury, despite what he was able to do through 3 years, where he kind of built on each year, is mediocrity. And you're glad that the owner, Michael Bidwell, despite locking in through 2027 with Kingsbury and Keim, wasn't willing to settle for a ceiling of mediocrity. He's a guy that has preached that he wants to win. And I think that he kind of sent that message on Monday that, he's not going to stand for that. He's going to look for somebody who can take this team and Kyler Murray to the next level.
Yeah, we had kind of touched on that at the pre-recording before we got into the interview of that, how encouraging that just was, that Bidwell didn't go cheap this time. He didn't hold back. He decided to eat the money. And that was that in itself, regardless of whatever the next move is, even if it is something as disappointing as promoting Vance Joseph or things like that, or an unproven commodity, that in itself was an encouraging sign going forward as we proceed into the offseason. So
no doubt about it.
Yeah, but as you said, 4 years here, obviously some ups and downs. You noted the progression and wins each year, coming to a screeching halt this year with 4 wins. But how much, if any, was the Kyler Kliff tension boiling over? How much of those reports were kind of real, and did that lead at all to the failure of this season and then ultimately his firing this week?
Yeah. I didn't buy into that this relationship was ruined, or, that they couldn't get along. I thought, almost their working relationship was too comfortable, right? I think that it kind of didn't hold Kyler Murray as accountable, and just the style of player that he is. He's not like the Russell Wilsons of the world. He's not a guy that's just going to be self-motivated to go and take those steps to kind of better himself. I think he needs somebody to press him a little bit, and hopefully the next coach will do that, because I think there was a comfort level. There was more of a friendship than kind of a working relationship there. But I never bought into something beyond. I mean, there was the report from Josh Weinfuss and ESPN that he collaborated on with Jeremy Fowler, where, they said Cam Turner was kind of the liaison between the two of them. And, I'm sure that's partly true, but as far as kind of like the true context of it, I mean, the team was playing like crap all season long. Kyler wasn't playing great. Kliff wasn't calling a great game. He wasn't taking the offensive pieces that they were trying to incorporate without DeAndre Hopkins, or with DeAndre Hopkins, correctly. And the frustrations of losing boiled over. But as far as their working relationship and their ability to kind of maybe take this thing to the next step, I think kind of a long answer to it. There was no ability to do that, but it wasn't because they hated each other. I didn't get that sense at all.
Too much coddling in a way. And you've heard, I mean, obviously the Patrick Peterson thing that blew up, and there was kind of rumblings about how Larry Fitzgerald felt about the situation. But did you ever get the sense that the way that Kliff handled Kyler coming in as the number 1 overall pick, just here's the keys to the castle, this is your show. Do you think that there is any truth to that kind of rubbing some of the veterans on the team the wrong way?
I mean, it's kind of new school versus old school. Right. I think that's just that coaching style. But I actually haven't heard too much as far as, Kliff rubbing, the likes of P2 or Fitz the wrong way. I mean, obviously, it's just like a boss-employee relationship where they would probably do it differently. But they probably, understanding the importance of that position, right? And coming off of a swing and a miss like Josh Rosen, and not having any plan in place at the quarterback position, it was just Kliff's style, and it was probably to a fault. But that's just how he rolls, and that's why players really like him. But it's probably also a reason why when things go south, it's tough to find any kind of any way out by the style the way he coaches.
Right. Yeah. And that all makes a lot of sense. So when we start to look for the next guy, I said, kudos to you. You were in the press conference yesterday. You had the cojones to ask Bidwell directly, hey, Have you guys reached out to the Saints about Sean
Right.
Payton?
If you can comment on it, or do you anticipate reaching out to New Orleans about Sean Payton?
I'm not going to get into details of any of the candidates we're reaching out to.
So he had a good poker face.
Don't give me that
about it.
much credit. I mean, also ignorance, right? Or it's almost like, hey, I'm asking a question. I'm burning a question that I basically know the answer to. Exactly. It was almost rhetorical. It's just like, because I even prefaced it. I was like, if you can even comment. But he had that wry smile. And I think our body language experts out there, he was.
Oh, we're all going to read into it. That's for sure.
Right,
Any little smirk. Yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah, I mean, it was just, I was just dumb enough to ask it while other people were asking the important questions.
But that's the thing. If you would ask about uniforms too, then you're king. Those are the two things that
leave that up to my
fan
co-host Johnny Venerable. He probably would have done it. He absolutely would have done it.
I've been pounding the table mock uniforms for years, but
God, I hope so. I hope that's part of this whole off season. That'd be incredible.
Yeah, we'll get to that. But you guys kind of did something like this on PHNX probably a couple months ago, so you're pretty ahead of the curve. But I want you to give me 3 candidates. Obviously, one pipe dream that might be a little far-fetched. One that we just mentioned. Maybe one other than Sean Payton. But and then one kind of middle of the tier, more realistic, that can kind of get the fans excited. And then one that might not bring as much excitement to the fan base. Obviously, it could work out, but fans, media, we're all reactionary. We want it now. And if it's not what we want in the moment, then tempers could flare. But 3 candidates, one in each category. What you got?
Yeah. I think that there are a couple tiers here. There's like the proven commodities out there. I think that there's the top 2 guys, and that's like that's Sean Payton, that's Jim Harbaugh, and for whatever reason, I don't understand the criticism or skepticism when it comes to Harbaugh. I mean, he was so successsul in San Francisco. 4 out of the 5 years they were in the NFC Championship game. He did with Smith. Alex Smith, who was being called a bust in San Francisco until he got there. And then what he was able to do with the second rounder and Colin Kaepernick, and he was able to put him in a position to quarterback a team to the Super Bowl.
I kind of forgot that he had them in 3 straight NFC Championship games.
Unreal.
We've
if it wasn't for the Seahawks.
Right. We talked about how jealous, I mean, it's kind of a hate but respect type thing we are of the Niners. Just in the past decade, just like the culture, the mentality, and it luckily for them, from Harbaugh, there was a couple stopgaps coaches, but it's kind of continued on of, we're going to run the ball, we're going to be tough up front, and we're going to dominate you physically. And that's something that we haven't seen with the Cardinals in forever, at least 2015. So for Harbaugh to bring something like that from Michigan and what he did in San Francisco, even back to Stanford, that's arguably my 1A for sure. For sure.
Yeah, no doubt about it. So I think, you've got, Peyton, what he did in 16 seasons in New Orleans and turning things around in the Super Bowl. I mean, that's obviously my top pick. And Harbaugh, I think it's probably more realistic. He takes that Walmart money and probably lifetime supply of their khakis and milk. So he's probably more fit for Denver and wanting to kind of take part on the Russell Wilson reclamation project. But so I've got Peyton 1, and if that's against the rules, I can't remember what the criteria was. You look at the next tier, and it's the coordinator crop, right? It's the rising stars, and I'm having a tough time differentiating between the offensive guys. I like Shane Steichen from Philly. He helped with Herbert in LA before moving on to Philadelphia. A real simple offense that I think would be easy for Kyler Murray to kind of duplicate here. We saw it firsthand when Philly was in town and beat the Arizona Cardinals because Matt Amendola couldn't even come close on that kick. So like Ben Johnson, Steichen, and then you got Kellen Moore mixed in there. So those guys are all like, I can't figure out who's going to be the top guy. I like DeMeco Ryans. I think I would love to stack the San Francisco contingent. Like if you can kind of steal from San Francisco and get the GM coach just duo, that's a good place to steal from, right? Just because what we talked about, exactly. You want what they have, and the best way to do it is maybe kind of take from them. And, they're already going to interview 2 of their execs, player personnel guy, assistant GM types. I think what D'Amico Ryans brings to the table, it was because there's so many question marks as far as was he going to translate that quickly from the playing field to DC and kind of filling the shoes of Robert Saleh, who was so successful. So I think he's a guy that's going to be hard nosed. He's going to know what to do, not only with Kyler Murray from, trying to just coach him up. Obviously you want to pair him with a great offensive coordinator, but the two other first rounders you have on this roster, and Isaiah Simmons and Zaven Collins, I think, what D'Amico Ryan could do with those two guys with that athletic ability would be unbelievable for this defense that they really haven't invested many dollars into. And it's kind of, you get in the facelift with JJ Watt moving on. And then you look at the third guy. I mean, I'll probably take in one of those offensive guys before I take one of the retread categories like Frank Reich. I just don't, it does nothing for me, if he's the OC with D'Amico Ryans, I might sign up for that. But I'll probably say Shane Steichen from Philly as my three guy, but I think he's interchangeable with Ben Johnson, Kellen Moore, Mike Kafka.
And Dorsey kind of in the mix
exactly.
a little bit too.
Yep.
Yeah. I think we're lockstep there in 1, 2, and 3 with Peyton, Harbaugh, Ryans. Those are three that I've had my eye on for some time, a little bit, but you could push back a little bit on Ryans with what you said, a younger type guy, not as much experience. And then also the fact that defense is fucking loaded with talent everywhere. So you could be a little watered down. That would be my only worry. But you kind of you look at him almost the way he carries himself is a little similar to Saleh even. And the way he turned the Jets around, not a lot of talent. They picked it up in the last couple of years, but that was kind of a quick turnaround and going, what they win 8 games, 7 games. And with the Jets,
with no quarterback play,
that's a feat. So
and you look at those two teams, those two defenses. You got Quinnen Williams, who's an ass kicker in New York, and then in the front seven, as far as what they have in San Francisco, including on the edges with Bosa. You could with the 3rd overall pick in the draft, you can certainly kind of replicate that with a Will Anderson or a Jalen Carter. Yeah,
and that's a show for another day, I'm sure. With the whole draft combine, we got a long time to talk about all that.
Sure,
but. Steve Keim, you mentioned a little bit of the executives that were kind of being thrown around, but Steve Keim also not being brought back. He's stepping away after there were some weird reports that he was going to be kept in some capacity, which never made a lot of sense to me. It seemed kind of like something that Bidwell maybe put out there to soften the firing, make it not look as bad on Keim's part, being as how close they are, but resigned. Correct. He stepped away on his own.
It was officially, he said a couple times and made a point to, he resigned and he accepted his resignation. And, that sounds like to me, when we talk about all this money locked up in extensions, you resign, you're walking away. It's not correct. It's not like Kliff Kingsbury, where Kingsbury is right now going to get every dime until he takes another job of that guaranteed contract extension. So no, it doesn't. Yeah. It's a completely different story with Keim, which, I think odd. Fans, it is really odd. And that the oddness of it, I think, peaked a couple weeks ago when a college football reporter started trying to connect some dots and stuff like that, which I don't think it'd be responsible for us to get into. But correct. It's unreal. It's unreal what's been going on, and it's gone on for far too long, really. Just with him in that position, and where you haven't gotten the best effort, right? Or the best picks, obviously. I mean, the draft record is brutal. The hit rate, especially in the first round, hasn't been there. So miserable. I think that kind of got lost in the celebrating of the changing of the head coach. But, it kind of brings back more energy and excitement to draft season that I think this fan base had lost after another draft where, Trey McBride was inactive game 1. We barely saw the rookie 3rd rounder pass rushers for the first half of the season, and still not enough at the second half of the season. So I think that's going to reinvigorate a fan base which is one of my favorite times is draft season, scouting prospects and, doing mock drafts. And then once the drafts are due, grading them out and looking at these prospect players and seeing how they project. And then you just don't get a chance because they don't get a chance come the regular season.
Yeah. Well, that's definitely something Cardinals fans have come accustomed to. It's like, Well, it's late December. I guess we can pull out the mock draft simulator here and get going. Maybe just see
Right.
what we can do. But the Trey McBride being inactive week 1, I think was one of my biggest rants that I had on the show. That infuriated me. Get him on the field in some capacity, cover kickoffs, do something. Let him get a field for what that speed is like on an NFL field. So, yeah, we won't get too deep into that. But that one was the way that even that's the other thing about Vance too, the way that they've just sheltered some of these young, talented guys and not got them on the field in some way, shape, or form. And by the time they do, it's too late. So,
yeah, I think that's the case against him as an internal candidate. You know, you can't really point to, the guys that he's developed and got, you gave him 2 first-round linebackers, and what can you really say for him? I mean, they can play like they've played. They get an attendance record. As far as, Isaiah Simmons this year, that was brutal. That was another point of frustration.
Borderline
he was barely playing
almost at the early part of the season. So, and that guy's too talented to be ever put in a conversation like that. But in terms of the next GM, it's something that's been talked about a lot, internal versus external. What are your thoughts between the two? And is anything ever? I don't know how unique that would be if it's a Quentin Harris A-Dub tandem as a GM. Like, is that something that's even? Is that a rare thing in the NFL? Like,
no doubt about it. Yeah, there isn't much where it's, definitive or defined roles where you've got a GM and an assistant GM, and it just seems like they were just placeholders. They were getting their shot at this. Obviously, they've already interviewed for the spot. They had the interim tag, and they were just kind of moving the chains as they got to the end of the regular season. It would be pretty surprising to see either one of them kind of come away with the spot, the GM spot. But they'd be great to kind of keep within the organization, keep some continuity in that front office, that scouting department. But if they're not, Harris is already lined up to talk with Tennessee, I believe, and Adrian Wilson, was tied to the Jags job last year. So they're not going to be looking for work for very long if they bring in somebody else. But I think they haven't had a external GM since 1994. So it's time for some fresh eyes on this thing.
Yeah, I think we've talked and we both agreed about that. So the thing that we talked about with Adrian Wilson too, we brought it up a couple weeks ago, like the fact that if he would to go in and not succeed, like the reaction of fans, like a beloved player like that's in the Ring of Honor, that's got all like he's yesteryear's Buda Baker. Like that was our Buda back then when we were kids. But like to see him, if he were to go in and fail, like I couldn't go on Twitter and log in and say a bad word about him. Like I don't want to hear all the negativity going his way. Like I want to shield him from that. I don't want him to have to go through that. So let him go to Jacksonville if he has to, or wherever else, and get the job somewhere else. I don't want a John Elway situation or something like that where people want his head on a stake.
Yeah, probably saves just kind of keeps him out of the criticism, and if you let him go be successful elsewhere, I mean that conversation's easier than, man, great player but shitty GM.
So in terms of which hire comes first between GM or head coach, does that have any precedence at all? Does it really matter?
Yeah, I think so. Bidwill kind of stressed that he wanted the GM first, kind of set that because there is speculation that he's a guy that likes to meddle a little bit and maybe make some decisions of his own as far as the football operations, and kind of debunk that a little bit. I think he wants to get a GM in place and then make the decision and kind of work in concert with the new GM as far as hiring the GM. But the fear is, right, when you have a coach like Sean Payton available, that if you make the wrong choice at GM, is that going to turn him off from this franchise? Or if you lose that kind of ace up your sleeve against the other teams, where you can give him all the power he wants. I think that's the fear there. But, there's ways that you can communicate, I'm sure, get the insight as far as what Peyton wants between now and when he can interview with NFL teams a week from next week. So he's not going to, I don't think he's ignorant to that, to where if it's going to sink the deal potentially with Sean Payton, that he's going to he's going to pull the trigger on that. So, but seems like he wants to do GM first and then head coach, and I don't see any issue with that.
Yeah. I was just curious because there was a little bit of talk about that, and that was the first thing that came to my mind was Sean Payton whenever he said that he wanted to go GM first. So thought I'd ask you about it, but should be a very interesting offseason. We just talked about the new GM, the new coach. There's surely going to be a lot of roster turnover, new fresh faces as well. Jordan Schultz reported today that the Cardinals will intend to trade DeAndre Hopkins this offseason, or at least look into it. Reportedly, Bidwell has already told GM candidates in interviews that may be in their plans for next year. How do you feel about that? Explain it to me how it makes sense to move off of Hopkins, who's in his prime, and then on top of that, you'll have this dead cap money that'll come from him as well. And I know there's a way to manipulate it, and I'm sure you'll explain it, but.
No, I mean, I think that it's probably more mutual than this report is kind of displaying it, right? I mean, D-Hop probably wasn't happy playing for a 4-13 team, or for as long as he obviously missed the first 6 games of the season due to the PED suspension that all of us probably agree is BS, considering the minimal traces were found and an unknown substance. So, at 31 years old, $30 million cap hit next season. Cardinals won't really be cap strung. So, as far as cap space, what are you going to free it up for? Do you want to be a player from the big free agents this season? Probably not, right? I mean, as far as, DeAndre Hopkins, it just seems like it would be mutually beneficial for there to be a parting of ways, right? And you can do that. You could do it through a trade, post June 1st, where it would kind of ease the sting of a cap hit to where if they did it now, there'd be $22 million in dead money. If you do it post June 1st, you can spread it over 2023 and 2024, cut it in half, and you would save about close to $20 million in cap space this season, which is appealing when you're trying to rebuild and probably bring in a new coach's guys. So, I think D-Hop, there was reports that he was going to request a trade anyway. So for this to kind of paint it as Bidwell wants to do it, that's a bit strange to me, bit far-fetched, but is he kind of eating that one for his star player? Bidwell's, even with Patrick Peterson, when he requested a trade in 2018, he sat down and talked with P2 back in the day. So I wouldn't be shocked if there was some sort of conversation between Bidwell and D-Hop, and D-Hop's like, hey, I see what's coming. You see what's coming. I want to win. I don't, like JJ Watt said on Hard Knocks, your window is not long in this league in order to make that money and compete for championships. And I'm sure he's probably willing to waive his no trade clause. And that's an important part of this, or even restructure things to even ease it up, the cap hit, dead money, even more so. But that's, I think that there is something in Cardinals fans last year probably wouldn't have been on board, but after seeing this roster just not compete with him, without him and with him, because they were just saying, hey, just wait, get through the 6 games. And the first game back was a little, we had some fun against the Saints, but after that it wasn't fun at all. So you can see okay, that's not the missing piece. There's more to it. They need to get more assets. They need to rebuild this thing. And at the same time, I mean, so many fans were, and I don't buy completely into this, wanting to see Fitz go elsewhere and run a ship. I mean, you get the opportunity with a guy like Hop to do the right thing and let him go compete probably in his final year, maybe 2 max. So you got some pretty solid years from DeAndre Hopkins. Yeah.
And likely he'll go to one of those contenders. So if you're looking at it from that standpoint, a first-round pick is going to be likely in the late 20s, mid-20s maybe. Is a second-round pick that far back in the draft?
I think first,
what do you think?
I think a first is at 31. I think it's a little bit rich. I mean, you saw 4 wide receivers last year go for first, but they were all in their 20s, and the oldest guy was Devontae Adams, and he was a monster again this year, and he's 29. You got Tyreek Hill, he's 28. You have AJ Brown, who's 24, and you've got Hollywood, who's 25. It'd be tough to net a first rounder. So Do you get what you paid for him, a second round pick? I think you certainly take that, or a third rounder. But if you get to like fourth round, fifth round, you're like, okay, maybe it's just worth keeping him or sitting on him until the trade deadline. Just find something that makes sense for the organization to create assets and cap space and hopefully expedite this rebuild, because that's what it is at this point. It's like if you've got talent on your roster, obviously, but this roster couldn't compete. So you've got to trade it. You got to take some of those talented players and turn them into assets and expedite this thing. So he gives you that ability, and it seems like he's willing to do so with a no trade clause. And Jacksonville, I think somebody said Jacksonville.
Jacksonville and LA Chargers were the two names that, I mean, I didn't know if it was from a accredited type report, but those were the two names. Actually, I think
that's what they said. It was
sports radio.
Yeah, it was a Gambo that said that.
I think
somebody was in our chat saying that today. And those make sense. I mean, how harmless
Trevor
would it
Lawrence,
be?
Herbert.
Yeah, send him down there. Christian Kirk can thrive again. Who's thriving down there. DeAndre Hopkins can go down there. No problem with that. I don't think Cards fans have any problem with that.
No.
I don't feel like it's going to bite you in the ass,
mind. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Well, you said something about getting what you paid for him. I mean, we got to get something at the level of David Johnson then. Some kind of middle of the pack running back, aging running back. That's got to be a part of the deal, I would think. But
yeah, I don't know. Do they have a couple? I'm sure they could sign one and just send it our way. It's probably fine.
Yeah, that's fine. Aside from Hopkins, then do you anticipate any other surprise veterans that possibly wouldn't be on the roster in 2023?
We were talking about that a little bit, and like you could see, because with new GMs and new coaches, these aren't their players, so if they think they don't necessarily believe in what the previous regime saw, and they feel like another team would view them as valuable, like guys like I think Isaiah Simmons or Zaven Collins could become those guys. Rondale Moore, I don't think has much value right now. But yeah, there's not much more to
maybe
it. I don't think
Humphreys maybe if you want to move.
That'd be tough. Jones he's going into his final year, and somebody might roll the dice if they want to bring back Kelvin Beachum. I don't know who's in the building any longer that would kind of vie for Beach right now, even though he probably deserves a look, but I think right now the Arizona Cardinals are in a unique situation to where everything you can make a case for it, right? I mean, nobody is safe, and nobody's. I think everybody's expendable at this point, and that's like not an indictment on these guys. It's just the reality after 4-13. Probably the guys who are untouchable are like Budda Baker, right, and then and Kyler, right? I think outside of that. And I wouldn't even be shocked if they started throwing Kyler around.
Let's not go down the quarterback road.
Complicates things, right?
Let's just that 3 overall pick. Who knows who's going to be sitting there?
Right?
That's a story for another day. We'll close on this. If there is a silver lining going forward with the organization, obviously coach gone, you got maybe some optimism with the new coach. What is it that fans can look forward to make us think that this can be a quick turnaround?
I mean, you've got a few good problems to have, right? You've got some of the best head coaching candidates available, and sometimes you've only got, as of right now, 5 teams that have vacancies, and the Cardinals with a lot of things that would be appealing to those candidates. So I think as far as we talk about top 3, I think when you don't really have to go much further down the list as far as top 3 coaching candidates. If you do get further down that list, you got to hit the panic button, but I don't think they will. So you're going to get a pretty solid head coaching choice. I think that's going to come with a solid GM choice. And then, the third overall pick, we're talking about Will Anderson. We're talking about Jalen Carter. We're talking about, a debate that's a good debate to have, a good problem to have. And after a 4-13 season, where it was just an off season in full season worth of dysfunction, finally to have good problems in the wake of that, it's good for Cardinals fans. But with that, you need the decision makers that are put in place to make the right ones. So it's exciting. It's not I wouldn't say blank canvas, but they did hit the reset button, and you can move forward with some talented pieces. The cupboard's not bare like 2018. So there is a little bit more excitement than that.
Right. It's definitely, you don't have it that much. I mean, our success wasn't too far away. You're just looking at 2 years ago.
Right.
You're in the playoffs. So, right. Okay. Well, Bo, we appreciate your time, my friend. We knocked Johnny off the list last year. He came on. That was early on. I don't know if – I hope he likes us. I don't know. I thought it went pretty good. Now we got you. You got to put in a word to Frank for us. He's got to be –
You want to have Frank Sanders on?
Oh, he followed me on Twitter the other day. I was like, oh, all right. We're going to make this happen. We're going to make it happen.
Slide in those DMs.
So whenever Frank, he's like, who is this guy? You guys just went on their show. Did they suck? You don't have to lie. Give him an honest answer, but that's the next on the list for us. So
only if you ask him about his Kliff Kingsbury tattoo will I put in a good word.
That was definitely going to be a question. That's going to be a question for sure if he agrees to. But this was awesome. We do appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, anytime, man. Anytime. I love it.
Awesome. All right. Thanks, man. Have a good one.
Take care, guys. Garrett, take care, man.
Yep, you too.